Hi guys, I hope you are all staying safe and having a good quarantine and not going too stir crazy, but remember, it's really important to stay inside right now so you don't get COVID-19. If you do have to go outside, in California, it's required that you have a mask outside now or else you might receive a fine. So in this video, I'm going to go over how I make my masks, which are also available for sale on Etsy. A link will be available in the description below. And this is just, like I said, basically a video going over about how I make these masks, also how you can make these masks if you want to make your own.
Also, I forgot to mention this, but I already took my wig off, so I'm not going to film myself saying this. My masks are strap masks, not elastic straps, and that's for two reasons. Because elastic is really hard to find right now because everyone's making masks. So I only had literally this much elastic left to make for my boyfriend. These are both masks I made for my boyfriend. He wasn't doing too well with the strap mask because he has a really puffy beard. So the elastic mask was easier to tuck into his beard. So just keep that in mind.
The material you will need is a sewing machine. You can hand sew your mask, but remember that does take longer. The fabric that you will be making your mask out of, that's 100% cotton. Fabric for your straps that necessarily does not have to be 100% cotton, but does have to be strong and durable. Pins, of course, to help create the folds and pinning together your fabric. The next two items aren't necessary, but they are helpful. It is an ironing board to help have a flat surface and an iron to help preset your seam to make your fabric nice and flat. We'll also, of course, need thread and fabric scissors. So I used the pattern that New York Times provided with a few tweaks here and there. A link will be provided in the description below. Basically the measurements were 6.5 by 9.5. However, I still cut a ½ inch around. A surprising amount of my customers were male, and men statistically have bigger heads and also needed extra space to tuck their beards in. I also forgot to mention that you need a pencil and ruler to create your pattern. Make sure you cut off your frayed edges like you see here. Also the edge that comes with the fabric that has the holes in it. I tried to show them here, but they were really hard to pick up on my camera, but most seamsters should know what I'm talking about. Make sure you cut off the tag edge that has the name of the fabric, just basically the big white edge that comes with the fabric. You'll notice two things. I already cut off the bottom part of the fabric without filming it, my bad, and that I'm messing with the fabric a lot here, and that's because I'm making sure it's straight. Because when it comes to fabric, if a single thing is off, it can create a really rough frayed edge, and it turned out it was just a string that I just pulled out. So you want to make sure that everything is nice and even. And then you just cut out your pattern. Next is the fabric for the straps. Make sure you measure it out to 18 inches. Iron it out to make it flat. Once again, make sure you cut off your frayed edges. Before cutting my straps, I ironed again, and then folded, and then ironed, and then folded again. This was to see easier where I needed to cut. That way I can rely on those fold lines rather than just my eye. It is time to cut your straps out. You'll notice that my cuts are still a little big here. That's because I was having issues with my machine and the strap, and so or else the bobbin messes up, so I had to try and figure out a size that was not too big but not too small, right in between, and that's what I'm doing here by trimming the straps even more. Make sure you listen to your machine and how your machine works and what your machine wants to do. Next, I preset my seams with the iron. I fold down the edges of the straps and take the iron and iron them with the edges folded to preset my seams to make it easier when I sew. Also, so I don't have to deal with that many pins. Now it's time to finally sew. I always sew the straps first because they take the longest. Fold your strap in half. You don't have to put pins in if you preset the seams, but you can if you want. I use a zigzag stitch to help hold in all the fabric. Don't forget to back stitch your edges, and yes, my thread is a different color from my fabric. It's easier to do it this way so I don't have to switch the thread all the time because there kind of is a shortage on sewing supplies right now. I also don't back stitch the very edge of the strap because That way I know which side is the edge I'm going to sew to the mask, and the strap will get locked in by the seam of the mask. You don't have to do this next step, but it does make it easier if you're doing my method where you don't cut apart the two pieces of fabric, the front and back. You can also cut these two pieces of fabric apart, but to make life easier, you can iron your mask to make it easier when you attach the straps. Make sure you're ironing it inside out or good side to good side of the fabric. So with the end that you did not backstitch sticking out of the mask while the rest of the strap is inside the mask with the good side of the pattern. This is because you're going to turn it inside out and unfold it with the strap sticking out of the edges. You want to make sure that the straps are sticking diagonally out, because if you don't, it can create a weird shape later. Make sure you do all four corners of your mask. Then tuck your straps in so you can sew along the edge. This is going to be a little hard, but if you move around the straps while you sew, it should be easier. Now it's time to sew the edges of your mask. You are still going to do this good side to good side. So you're going to sew about 1/2 inch away from your edge. Once again, don't forget to backstitch. And you're just going to go along your mask. Also, don't forget to change your setting from zigzag back to straight line, unlike I did where I kind of made that mistake. A good technique for your edges is to backstitch your strap to make sure it's secure, and then forward it again, and then also to leave your needle in, lift your foot, and turn the fabric. That way you don't lose any grip on the fabric. When you get to the last edge that you need to sew, tuck in all your straps. Make sure everything is even, and sew. However, for this edge, you're going to stop, then backstitch. You don't have to backstitch, but I found it easier to backstitch when you're turning your mask right side out. That way no seams rip while you're doing it. Have an inch gap. Don't forget to backstitch. Then finish this edge. Here my bobbin ran out of thread, so I had to change my bobbin thread to finish this edge. I lined it up with the seam that was already there so I didn't have to backstitch. Finish the edge and then made sure to backstitch the end. This was the fun part because now you get to turn your mask right side out. The best strategy I found was reaching into your gap, pulling on the straps to help turn the mask right side out. This is where I said you want to make sure your straps were sticking diagonally out because they make nice corners like this. If they don't, you might get a mask that ends up looking like this. I make sure to mark where my gap is so I know to go over that edge when I sew. Iron that sucker again to make it flat and start the folding and pinning process. I make 3 folds as opposed to 4 just because it's easier for me, but you can make 4 folds. My camera died while I was making it even, so here it is even. Now it's time to sew your seam around the mask. When you go over your folds, you can stop, straighten it, lift the foot if you have to, Re-straighten it under. Pull your pin out and keep going. And you can do that to be careful with every edge, because sometimes on the back end a corner can flip over and kind of ruin the shape of the mask. And now you just go over the edge of your mask with this seam, making sure you run over your gap and that your gap is closed. Now it's time to do your final stitch and seam. You go inside your mask about half an inch away from your first seam, and just once again go around the mask. And now you're all done with the mask, and it's time for my favorite part, which is cutting off the extra thread. You can use small scissors or a seam ripper, but I prefer small scissors, and make sure you do it in bright light like I'm doing so you don't accidentally nick anything, because you don't want to create holes in your mask. One last iron and your mask is ready to go. And you are all done. Enjoy your nice new mask.
Alright everybody, I really hope you enjoyed this video about how I make these masks. Once again, they're available online through Etsy. I have many patterns available, more than you saw the one that I was making, and of course this one. I have another Star Wars pattern available. I have these cute little black and pink patterns available. And I also have some more fabric coming in. I'm going to have a Harry Potter, a Doctor Who, and a Sally fabric coming in, and also I'm going to have this cool like Skull Girl and space fabric coming in. But I hope you enjoyed this video and that you have a great day. Bye!